Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. We have a great group of panelists today. I've really enjoyed my conversations with them over the last week. And so I'm going to do a very brief introduction here. I loved what we were just hearing from Andy, and I think really in our conversations, too, we came to the same point, which is we're trying to figure out how we can make sure that every kid gets a big box of bike parts. That so much of play is really about exploration. And I kept thinking when he was talking, my husband is a poet, and he teaches graduate students who want to be writers. And one of the hardest things for him to get through to them is that great poems are not born whole. They're not a genius that you sort of conceive of in your mind wholly and purely, and then you sit down in a moment of fabulous inspiration and write it from beginning to end. It's really a box of bike parts. You know, you start with a word, you start with an image, you start with an idea, but you have no idea where you're going. And you just start connecting them to other things until finally you can sit back and look at it and say, is that a poem? I think maybe I really have a poem here. So we want to talk a little bit today about all the various ways that we can approach the toy and how the toy can connect kids to play and how play will connect them to learning. It's impossible to stay sort of on topic in this because there's so many implications around it. So I think inevitably we're going to be begging other questions and other tangents here. Do parents understand that children learn through play? We'd like to think they do, but I think we're going to hear that they don't understand that well enough. How does layering technology onto all these toys, how is that affecting these children's experience of play? What are they learning as a result of the technology that's being layered on? And sort of the most fundamental question of all that I know at the magazines we spend a lot of time talking about and thinking through, which is, do kids really have enough time to play? And are they encouraged enough to play in that kind of open-ended environment in which they're the ones with the control, nobody else has control of that experience? So I'm going to introduce each panelist one by one, give sort of the formal introduction to who they are, but I've asked them to talk a little bit about what they do and what excites them, and something that they're working on now that's of particular interest. Everybody's got a lot of interesting things happening. So I'm going to start with Jim Gray. So Jim is the Director of Learning at Leapfrog Enterprises. He's responsible for their core curriculum and the learning design of the company's numerous products. Previously, he managed the Leapfrog Learning Lab, where he oversaw user experience and product development involving thousands of kids. Jim was a postdoctoral scholar at the Center for Innovative Learning Technologies and instructor of interactive media design at the Rochester Institute of Technology. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you. See if this mic works. Sounds like it's on. So, yeah, I've been working in this field in some ways for 20 years or more. I have a small team at Leapfrog. Each person is an expert in one area of learning, like language and literacy or math and science, and so we really bring things together across the company to make sure the highest quality is there, including a very playful kind of approach to learning. And one of the things I'm most really excited about, Tag. Has anybody seen Tag? Is a new product that we have. I had one fan over there already. It's one of our new connected, there it goes, our new connected products. It uses a USB cable, same as your iPod with iTunes, and so it downloads content to the device, and that is where the audio comes from when you touch the book. And at the same time, the play data gets uploaded to a private online tool for parents, so they get a little glimpse into what their kids are actually engaged in and where the excitement is. That your daughter spent 3 hours, for example, with Ozzie and Mac, and on page 5 she learned how to say the word cat for the first time. That sort of insight. And the idea is that it can take the playful approach to literacy that kids have with the book as a solo experience on their own, and then share it with parents who are really busy and normally wouldn't be able to sit there and watch everything their child is doing, and really engage with what intrigued their child in a whole new way. So for me, that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, because we can share that data privately with parents and then anonymously in the aggregate know what thousands of kids are doing with each of the products, at what level, and anonymously use that as a way to improve it and be in a relationship with the parents and the kids around what's the right context, what's the right tool to enhance a playful sort of approach to learning and other kinds of learning.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. Michael is next. Michael McNally is the Brand Relations Director for LEGO. He's been there over 10 years. He has over 10 years of experience in the toy industry, the majority of which he spent overseeing communications for the LEGO Group, makers of the world's leading construction toys for children. And apparently, after being at the festival, I might say the world's leading construction toys for adults, too. This was an adult LEGO fan conference that my son was sort of allowed to sneak into. Mike directed launches of Bionicle and LEGO Mindstorms and serves as a member of the Communications Outreach Committee for the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. Mike?
Is this on? Every time I go to one of these things, I end up with a cold, so bear with me here. I think going back to what Andy said in the beginning, we sort of sell mass market boxes of bike parts for kids to connect things together and figure out what goes here. If I put this there, what happens? And if I take it off and try something different. And I think it's that natural process of self-directed discovery and possibility that makes LEGO so relevant, not just for kids, but to Alix's point, to adults as well. Just a little bit about me. I have two young girls, ages almost 8 and just turned 6, and both of them are also huge fans of Miley Cyrus, much to our chagrin, although she is fantastic. And you know, both of them are 6 and 8, going on 18. So you know, we are living in a household of kids who definitely are getting older and older at younger and younger ages all the time, which you know is nothing new to all of us who are in the toy industry or focused on child development. I think what qualifies me to be a part of this panel, frankly, is the fact that as a kid, I did two things. I played with LEGO and I played video games. And a lot of people today, one of the main things that I do is answer questions about how could LEGO be relevant in a world where we have iPods connected to toys and we have technology, digital play. I'm a living, breathing example of a kid who did both in the early 80s, and they go hand in hand because really video games are the virtual equivalent of putting a LEGO set together. It's essentially starting from point A, moving along to the challenge, cause, effect, trial, error, take it apart, try it again, practice, and then you get to the next step. We turn that building instruction page. So there is this really unique synergy between LEGO play and technology play when technology is being used in the right way for those toys. So I'm very excited about today's conversation.
Thank you, Michael. Mitchel Resnick is Professor of Learning Research at the MIT Media Lab. Mitch develops new technologies to engage people, especially children, in creative learning experiences. His lifelong kindergarten research group developed the programmable bricks that were the basis for the LEGO Mindstorms and Pico Cricket. Am I saying that right? Pico Cricket construction kits. Mitch co-founded the Computer Clubhouse Project, an international network of after-school learning centers for youth from low-income communities. Mitchel?
I think a lot of the work that we do is driven by our deep belief that success and satisfaction and happiness in the future is going to be based not on how much you know or exactly what you know, but the ability to think and act creatively. And yet I think we're doing a really bad job these days of helping young people grow up as creative thinkers. So we're really driven to say, how can we help young people grow up as creative thinkers? As Alix mentioned, our research group is called the Lifelong Kindergarten Group because we've gotten a lot of our inspiration from the way children learn in kindergarten. And we think traditional kindergartens do a great job of helping young people develop as creative thinkers. In fact, we're really sad to see trends today where a lot of kindergartens are becoming more like the rest of school, where they're filling out worksheets, filling out phonics worksheets of various sorts and math exercises. We want to do exactly the opposite. Rather than turning kindergarten into like the rest of school, we want to turn the rest of school and the rest of life more like kindergarten to make everybody be able to have a chance to playfully design, create, and invent. So that's what we work on. We've worked a lot with the LEGO company, as was mentioned. We helped develop the ideas and technologies for the LEGO Mindstorms robotics kit. Recently, a big project of ours is a project called Scratch, whereas we see that with the collection of bike parts or with Lego bricks, those are great for letting kids build things in the physical world, of building structures, building mechanisms. There's still not a really good equivalent or analog for the bag of the collection of bike parts or Lego bricks for creating behaviors in virtual worlds, to be able to make your own interactive stories and games. So that's what Scratch is. It's a collection of parts that kids can put together to create their own interactive games, stories, animations, and then share them online. So it's a website that we have that's somewhat like YouTube, but instead of putting up videos, you create your own interactive stories and games, share them with others, and then others can enhance them, modify them. So right now, since we launched this a year ago, kids have uploaded more than 200,000 Scratch projects. And a lot of them are then collaborations with other kids around the world where they keep on modifying, enhancing each other's. And we see this as something that helps kids develop as creative thinkers, but also systematic thinkers, and learning to be able to work collaboratively. So those are some of the goals that we're working on.
Great. Thank you, Mitchell. And Nancy, down at the end. Nancy has been the director of the 92nd Street Y Nursery School here in New York City since 1990. And she's a member of the 92nd Street Y Wonder Play Leadership Team, the Y's Early Childhood Initiative. She serves on the NYU Child Studies Center Education Advisory Board and the Syracuse University School of Education Advisory Board. She's co-author of Practical Wisdom for Parents, Demystifying the Preschool Years from Knopf, came out last year. Nancy should introduce herself, and I'm hoping she's going to talk a little bit about a conference she has coming up in November that unfortunately I think is sold out, and you'll be disappointed that it's sold out if you're not planning to go. So Nancy?
Thank you. Yes, I get to do something that hopefully all of you can appreciate. I get to observe and, if I'm really lucky, watch children play every single day. Between 2.5 and ages 5, hundreds of children over all these years that I've been working there, and I can really see that play in its purest form really happens in these early childhood years, and you learn so much for watching how children play. We are having a conference at the 92nd Street Y hosting it. It's primarily for early childhood educators. The conference is the importance of play, imagination, and creative thinking. And some people who are here today will be there, and a lot of educators and people in the field who will be there talking about this. And it struck a nerve. I will tell you that we had maybe available places for 900 people. I think in about a week it closed because there is so much concern on the part of educators right now about the quality of children's play, how children are playing, and how much time they are playing too. And I think we clearly want to spread this word among parents. One of the things that I've found in having written a book and traveled around the country over the past year too, talking to groups of parents primarily, is that there's a lot of anxiety on the part of parents, which you probably all are aware of, and they're very anxious about getting their children ahead, making sure they have every advantage, making sure that before they're 5 years old they've mastered, second languages, every sport that they might possibly play in the future, and a musical instrument. There's a real pressure. The American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with a position statement and they're concerned about time and quality of play. Psychologists are concerned about it, and educators are concerned about it. Interestingly enough, parents aren't hearing this message. So it's been a real privilege of mine, and hopefully more so in the future as people are more concerned and thinking about what's best in children's play, to really be communicating with parents and really helping parents understand what children need, that they will get into Harvard if they have not mastered Chinese by the time they're 4 years old. That those are the kinds of things that we really want parents to be educated about, and I've been very excited about talking also to parents about, how to allay their anxiety and help children get what they need also in terms of play.
That's great. Thank you, Nancy. And that sets us up very well for the first question. I thought it would make sense for us to start with just sort of the fundamental premise that play leads to learning, which I think everybody in this room can agree to, even if we know it's a message that isn't out there enough. So I was going to ask Nancy to start, and I'm going to ask Jim to follow up on this question too. If you would talk a little bit about the developmental aspects of play. What types of skills do kids learn through play, and why is that meaningful in terms of a child's sort of lifelong appreciation for learning or confidence in their ability to learn?
Sure. I love David Elkind's quote when he said, "Play is not a luxury, but rather crucial dynamic of healthy physical, intellectual, social, and emotional development at all ages." I think that's true. And certainly child-initiated play does lay the foundations of learning. They learn to interact with others. They learn to recognize and solve problems. And they get that feeling of mastery that only comes when they're challenged but not frustrated at the same time. Play is never boring for children if it's initiated by them. A couple of areas, certainly in their physical development. They can develop through play, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, overall strength and integration of their muscles, their brains, and their nerves. Certainly it sets apart a start in their lives for healthy living, fitness, and of course counters obesity as well. In the academic areas, play is linked to creativity, imagination, and problem-solving skills, and it lays the groundwork for successful learning in reading and writing, in math and in science. If you think about what children do when they play, it's very language rich. They are interacting with words and language all the time and learning communication skills. They're also hands-on. Play for children needs to be hands-on. So they're interacting with water, with gravity, with wind, with earth. And all of these things help children understand the comprehension of scientific and mathematical concepts, because the expression of the physical realities of these things by interacting with them really help prepare them for later learning as well. Probably most importantly is the social emotional learning that takes place also. Make-believe play is the way in which children learn collaboration, cooperation, empathy, and impulse control. You can't be a good kindergartner or a first grader or a third grader if you don't have those kinds of things and learn them from the interaction that you have with your peers. It also really sets them up for moral reasoning in terms of later. They figured out how to resolve a problem with a friend independently. And probably the last thing I just want to talk about is that it is joyful. And play is joyful, and it is probably one of the greatest underpinnings for later adult happiness. And I think in terms of, it can't be underestimated how much happiness and joy have in terms of learning as well.
That's great, Nancy. Thank you. Jim, if you...
Yeah, Nancy mentioned self-control for kids, and when I put my developmentalist hat on, which is my original training, I go back to the real geniuses of the field, Vygotsky and Piaget, and I actually got my old Vygotsky book out and read it on the plane and enjoyed it in a different way. And there's an insight in there that I think relates to what's happening cognitively for young children around imagination and what's happening in terms of their ability to control their own life. So if you imagine a 1-year-old who picks up this, she's going to put it in her mouth and touch it and feel it, and her actions will be guided by the physical qualities of that object. Same with a block, anything else. But by the time you get to a 3 or a 4 or a 5-year-old, it's not just the physical qualities that guide what she does. They're the constraints. But what she'll be doing is imagining this is a horse, or this is a car, or this is an airplane, or this is anything else. It's her own imagination. It's the schema in her mind that's guiding what she actually does with the object and with her peers. And that's the beginning of developing self-regulation, what people now talk about in research as executive function. And those are the kind of things that are highly correlated with success throughout school and throughout life. And I actually think there's a similar kind of psychological state when kids are deeply embedded and engaged in that sort of fantasy that's their own creation and they're in charge of it. But they're in a state that's very much like flow. If anybody's read Mahai Csikszentmihalyi, there's a kind of a state that adults, artists especially, and people at Google probably and other places, if you're a programmer, people experience this a lot. You're just so deeply engaged with your agenda around your work that you lose track of time. And same for video games. So I think there's a commonality around that sort of self-control and having your understanding of the world be something that guides what you do, that is a thread that can start with that sort of imaginative play and then it carries you through life, basically.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Mitchel or Mike, anything you want to add right now? Mitchel's smiling. He's thinking about something. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of the things that I see is the real connection with play and learning. I think the best play experiences and the best learning experiences have to do with exploring and experimenting and testing the boundaries. So when I see that, and not all play is created equal, and I think we do have to have some sense of being able to have some finer ways of thinking about the different things that are gained from different play experiences. And for me, what's most exciting when I think of play and how I see the strongest connections to learning is this idea when I see kids playing, or adults playing for that matter, where they're testing new ideas, exploring the boundaries, pushing things until they don't work, and then making adjustments based on that. And I think we see that in a lot of play experiences, and that's, I think, a really important ways of thinking, exploring that you can apply to all different things that you do. And just I see play not as a particular activity, but sort of almost state of mind, a stance towards the world. That even if someone's just sitting there doing a math problem, they can have a playful approach where they're testing their boundaries, experimenting, exploring. So that sort of playful, sort of stance towards the world is the thing that is most important to me.
Okay, that's great. And I want to talk a little bit about what happens when we start to layer technology on that exploration, on that sort of search. And I think we've all had the experience, and I know in the magazines it's something we hear all the time from readers, sort of the wistful, don't you miss the days when all kids needed was like a spaghetti pot and a wooden spoon and they could make music? Or when all the kids would meet at the sandlot at the end of the day and have a pickup game. And implied in all of that is that not only are kids' time so constructed, but that there's something so low technology about that. And it's coming often from the parents who themselves are more and more and more plugged in. So I want to address a little bit that question of technology and what happens when we overlay that. And I'm going to start with Mitchel. So can you talk a little bit about the appropriate role you think technology should have in the world of children's play and learning? Because we're all going on the assumption that technology does have a role here, like anything else.
I think sometimes too often people take technology as this uniform category about what do we think of technology-based toys. And again, technology can be used in so many different ways that for me, the division between technology toys or computerized or electronic toys versus traditional toys, to me, I don't think is the right division to have. For me, when I try to think about the toys and playthings in children's lives, I think about what are the types of toys, whether they're traditional or electronic or technological, that enable kids to design, create, experiment, and explore. And some traditional toys, like wooden blocks and finger paints, allow you to experiment, explore, and design and create things. And some technological toys can do it as well. So for me, the important thing to say, if I look at a technological toy, the first question I ask is that going to enlarge the way that the user can design, create, experiment, and explore? Now, sadly, when I go into the toy store, in my mind, the vast majority of technological toys don't do that. So, in fact, I tend to be skeptical of a lot of technological toys. Even though I come from an institution like Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and technology is at the center of a lot of things we do, in my mind, I think a lot of times it's used in not very productive ways when it comes to children's playthings. Or even online, you see a lot of technology used where children are clicking, browsing, chatting, gaming, instead of designing, creating, experimenting, exploring. So for me, the key question to ask is, can we use new technologies to engage kids in new forms of designing, creating, experimenting, and exploring?
That's great. Mike, do you want to follow up?
I think what Mitch is touching on, and sort of the perspective that I'm taking, not just as coming from Lego, but also as a parent myself, is that there is a big difference between leveraging technology as a tool and leveraging technology to be an experience. And obviously, technology can be both, but I think the best technology applied to toys is that technology that is a tool that provides then an enhanced experience that children are engaging with. So I think a lot of temptation revolves around developing things that what experience is this technology delivering? I think when the technology becomes the experience and takes the child out of the equation of directing the experience or stopping and starting again in a new way with it, I think what we try and do at Lego is leverage technology as the tool that enhances the experience. We have Lego Mindstorms, which with the help of the MIT Media Lab, is exactly what Mitch was talking about. We don't sell the technology as the reason for buying Mindstorms. It's still a Lego set. It's a very high-tech Lego set, but the technology allows children to bring their models to life and then to explore in new ways everything that the Lego play pattern does, which is cause, effect, trial, error. If I put this here and program it that way, what happens? I don't want it to do that. I'm going to try again with a new combination. So the technology is the medium, and it's the tool that allows the child to have an enhanced Lego experience. It's not taking Lego and putting it into a technology box and selling technology for technology's sake. So I think we like to look at technology as something that, as long as the child stays in control and the technology is the medium, then it absolutely makes sense for the play experience.
Let me just give one example to maybe make it concrete. So this is something that was based on something that we saw an elementary school child making. As hopefully you can see, it's a little cat that's made out of craft materials. It's connected up to this little computer that we created, a type of construction kit we have. And the child who made this gave it some rules so that when you pet the cat, so what they did is they built in a light sensor, and they gave it rules that said when the light level goes down, when I pet it, I block the light, it meows. So in this case, they're using some very traditional materials, pipe cleaners, felt, some newer materials, a little computer, a light sensor, something that makes different sounds, but they all mix together. In my mind, it's all part of the bin of building parts. And then they had a new type of construction kit to be able to tell it what to do when certain things happen. And again, just to make the contrast to, you go into a lot of toy stores, and it's full of electronic toys of a dinosaur, and you poke its belly and it wiggles its ears, and you sing to it and it starts dancing. And it's incredibly sophisticated, but it was designed by people at the toy company, and all the children get to do is interact with it. In this case, it's the child who creates it, not just interacts it. And someone else might take this apart and make something totally different with it. So I think what we're trying to do is we see that the best learning experiences come when you're the one who's involved as the creator. So with a lot of those toys in the toy store, we have no doubt that the designers at the toy company learned a great deal when they were making it. We're not as convinced that the kids learn a great deal when they interact with it.
Yeah, that's great. I want to get at a couple of fundamental questions too that we're sort of setting up, and I'm going to start with Jim, which is to look at and think about what toy manufacturers need to consider, and on the other end of that spectrum, what parents need to consider when they're purchasing toys.
Yeah, let me just say a quick thing about the topic we were on for a moment. The way I think about technology and how it can be designed well is either as a tool or a medium of communication. And just to underline what both Michael and Mitch said, that it can be a tool that if it enhances what kids want to do, and it can be a medium of communication if it helps them then communicate in some way. And we can get into that later maybe in the Q&A, but I think both of your products and what we're doing with our connected strategy do that in different ways, and I think that's important. So what we think about at Leapfrog, and what I think other companies should think about in terms of kids and designing toys, is what do kids need and what do they want, and also what do parents want and need. That we have a good, close relationship with parents in such a way that we do lots and lots of marketing research. We don't just make an assumption and put something out there. We're in a constant conversation. When I ran the lab, we had probably 50 different kids a week that would come in, try products, see how they reacted, see what really sparked their imagination and curiosity and learning and what didn't. So companies should ask what's really wanted and needed, and then work closely with the people who will be using them in kind of a community relationship to create them. And on parents' side, I think of the notion of a healthy diet, healthy media diet. People often talk about mass media and other kind of technologies. Is there a healthy balance? And I would use that same concept in terms of ask yourself as you're thinking about different toys that you might buy, where does that particular toy fit in the whole scheme of what's in my child's toy box at home? You know, are there things that she can do independently? Are there things that are social and collaborative? Are there things that are online and also things that are offline? And overall, is it the right sort of balance that I want?
That's great, thank you. And Nancy, I know you have to act as a sort of almost informal advisor to the parents that come through your door every day. So we'd love to hear from you, kind of what you see are their questions and how you sort of try to direct them.
One of the things parents have been talking about lately is that it's very hard to go into a store and find something that doesn't use a battery or something else. To have open-ended materials that children can just create things with, problem solve with, do the trial and error, everything that Jim was just talking about. The other thing that I think we've been talking about and hearing a lot back from parents is the gender balance in these things. How do you encourage a girl to be involved in sort of making and doing things in ways that they might not be interested in, or how do you balance the gender differences in the way children play, I think is a very critical issue for parents also. And the open-endedness of things, I think, is really important. I think they need to know that, and they really talk about that, how to get that. I think the imagination, creativity, and fun that a toy creates for children is really important. I think what Mitchell was just saying, even if we go and look at toys for infants, there are so many toys that the object of it is to press the button and the light goes on, or press the button and the bell rings and something happens. Once that thing has happened, learning is over. It's done. They figured out that you do that and the end result is there. But how to get children more involved in interacting. I had a funny conversation with my co-author on the book, who said she was with her 14-month-old in a hotel room for a short period of time with no toys whatsoever. And he has one of those, what they call their office. He sits inside a thing, and there's around him a million different things to do that are completely overstimulating, but he likes it. All she had was a bottle of water with some water in it. And he spent 45 minutes doing this, watching the water go back and forth, and never got bored with it. And it was just one of those moments that you look at and we see every day, where you can take something that's nothing and make it into a toy for a child, because there's something about it that has an inherent fascination for a child.
That's great. Anybody want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think all too often parents sort of abdicate responsibility for what is a good toy or what children should play with to the television commercials that their kids are seeing, or the whatever wish list is being generated. And a lot of time, we do a lot of research, obviously, as all the toy companies do, and you hear moms or dads who say, I just buy them whatever they ask for. At Christmas time, if it's at the top of the list, I don't want to disappoint them. And I think to your point before, Alix, you said parents are wistful for the time when a wooden spoon was a microphone and pots and pans were a drum set. I think those days aren't gone. Mm-hmm. My kids use wooden spoons as microphones, or they use their hairbrushes or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And it's because we take an active role in helping them see that those things can become a microphone or a play toy. So I think that parents need to assume a responsibility also, and there's nothing wrong with going to a store. I take my kids to the store sometimes, as if they've gotten a good grade or whatever, and we'll go in and we'll say, you can pick anything you want. And the last time I went, it was just a couple of weeks ago, and my youngest daughter came running down the aisle with this thing, and can I get this? And I said, what does it do? And she looked at it, and she looked at me, and she looked at it again, and she said, I don't know. And I said, well, why do you want it? And she said, it looks cool. And I said, but what are you going to do with it when we get home? And she said, I don't know. She put it back, and then looked around a little bit more, and she ended up choosing a jigsaw puzzle. So I think you can, as a parent, take an active role in helping guide your children toward things that are what you want them to be plugged into, and not just plugging them into the things that are easy.
Yeah. And Nancy?
I was just going to add one thing. A rule of thumb that's come up in conversations with parents is that if you can't play with it in at least 3 different ways, leave it behind in the store, like your daughter did, because you took an active role in communicating that.
Yeah, I love that as a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Mike said something to me in our conversation last week that I really loved, because I'm particularly interested in how toys can help children understand their own creative abilities, and how it can lead to all sorts of creative problem solving, which is at that other end of creativity. And he said, I wrote it down, kids already know that it's really fun to play video games. What we need them to understand is that it can be just as fun designing a video game. So I wanted to start with Mike, and I'd like Mitchell to address this too. The question about the act of creating something, especially something open-ended that a child can make utterly their own, is a powerful learning experience. We've talked about that. We understand that. Can you talk specifically about how toys or toys with technology can engage kids in the creative process?
Yeah, I would love to take credit for that statement. It actually were the words of Dean Kamen, who I'm sure people are familiar with as a renowned inventor. He runs programs for kids that middle school and high school called FIRST and FIRST LEGO League, which is plugging kids into robotics experiences that helps them gain an appreciation and interest in science and technology. And I think the idea that kids love to play video games, how do we make them aware of the fact that it's also really fun to make the video game and to program it, or to be the person who puts it out to market for other people to enjoy? I think there's it's not a coincidence that many of the gaming companies or technology companies, Google as an example, Electronic Arts as another, Pixar even, we were talking earlier about Pixar, the animators, the people who are behind the scenes making the entertainment for kids today, most of them will say, I grew up playing with Lego, or I grew up playing with toys that allowed me, to Andy's point before, connect bike parts together and see that I am in charge of possibility. And so I think the idea that play experiences as a way to help children realize that they are full of potential and possibility, and the play experiences that they don't leave behind as they get older are the ones that stay with them, and then plug them into creating the experiences that we all appreciate today. I think we need to do a better job of helping parents understand the role they can play, and helping kids realize their potential through open-ended play and creative play that puts them in charge of creating things, so that we have more great entertaining experiences and development for the future.
Great. Okay. Mitchell, I'm sure you have something to add there.
Yeah, this idea of trying to open up the possibilities for children, young people, to be designing and creating, not just playing with games, I think is really important. And that's one of our goals as we develop this software called Scratch. Because I think right now there aren't very many good ways, even though we believe it's a really good thing and a lot of kids want to design their own games, it's not so easy. Traditional programming languages are really difficult to learn. So one thing we've done is to make it much easier with the type of graphical building block approach to programming your games. But maybe the biggest thing we've learned with Scratch is how important it is to embed this in a community, in a social context. So it's not just giving kids an easy way to create games, but to share them online. And this is where I think one of the most important parts of the internet comes up. It's like when we first put up Scratch a year ago, there was, a young person somewhere did a version of the Tetris game, and he created himself and put it online. Some people played it, but others said, oh, they thought they could do a better job. So they were able to take where he started, add some things to it, add color, add look ahead, change the scoring, and then put that up. And they're all commenting, giving examples, giving advice to each other. There are now several dozen versions of these Tetris games. Or sometime later, there was a girl in England who, instead of putting up a game, just put up a project with several different characters. And she wrote, I just like to make characters. If you want to use my characters in your game or story, please feel free to do it. If you have a different character you want, just leave a comment below and I'll make it for you. So she was setting up her online consulting service to make characters for others. So then a girl in Russia took one of those characters, put it in a game, was having trouble with some of the ways the game was doing. So another girl in New Jersey gave some advice on how to do it better. So of the 200,000 projects online, more than 30,000 are what we call remixes, where people are enhancing each other's projects, and all different forms of collaboration. So the thing that's been most exciting for us and most surprising is just the unbelievable diverse number of ways that kids are collaborating online as they're able to share it. And it's basically what you have online is you have a type of literature that can inspire you of what you might create and you can learn from. A lot of times kids learn to write, and they want to write because they read books that they're excited about, so they want to express themselves. If we give them a way to see what others have created and then able to add to it, and that's the way that they're also going to become engaged in designing and creating. So those are some of the things we're trying to do.